Welcome, everybody, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney, and I'm excited to have my pal, my friend, my colleague, my sergeant of arms, Greg Shamie, in the studio today. Welcome, Greg.
Hi,
If you have
Christine.
not
How
had
are
the
you?
pleasure of listening to Greg, go back to any one of the numerous episodes we have over the past couple of years. And guys, we are getting very close to our 100th episode here. So that's pretty exciting. When we started, we didn't know if we could get 1 week it done. So that's very exciting. And I want to give a big shout out because most of the credit goes to our two producers, Tatiana Dominguez and Richard Francisco, who have really helped push us and guide us and keep us on track. So anyway, with the new year here at Stepping Into Your Leadership, we have a whole new exciting roster of people coming into the studio this year, Greg. But I'm going to start today with Greg because Greg and I work together often. And one of the topics that has recently come up is on this idea of how do you build a team super quickly, supercharge it super quickly. In terms of this idea, Greg, because Greg is a master of teams, right? A little bit about his background, but when he came to us, not only was he from the world of theater, but also from the world of sports. And if you look at those two worlds combined, you add business into there and leading teams and businesses, you come up with this supercharged team coach, as I like to call Coach Shamie here. And so he has to go in oftentimes into worlds where they say, here's a bunch of amazing, brilliant people, but they've never worked together. And you have 1 week or 2 weeks to pull them together as a team. And you should see the magic that starts to happen. So I thought it would be a good topic for our podcast episode today to talk about how does anyone do this. If you're a new manager, if you're a seasoned leader and you go in and you have to pull together a team, if you're a leader of a school, a principal, and you've got new teachers, whatever it is, if you're a teacher in a classroom and you've got new kids, how do you pull people together really quickly to build team? So Greg, let's just give some tips for folks on this, but your thoughts.
Okay, well, first of all, it's so funny, right? Because when you hear team building, what comes to your mind?
Oh God.
I can't really
Ropes
prioritize that
courses,
right now. I can't prioritize that.
trust falls.
Trust falls, all those things. But why, how? I run a business. Why would I be taking time to do that? Here's the bottom line. The bottom line is, and I've seen this across all the clients we've worked with, when you have a leader who prioritizes building team dynamics and building culture, then everything else comes out of that effectively, right? And so it seems so easy, these things, and I'll mention tips and things that we do to build team effectively. It seems so easy, but the true question is what happens to us under pressure? What happens to us when the heat gets hot? What happens to the team? How does it perform under pressure? And so the whole concept we take is, okay, we're going to build the connectivity between the players, between all the different people on the team. We're going to help create an environment in which they can connect, build trust, and then start to understand each other's strengths, superpowers, and kryptonite areas for growth, right? So that they can then, when they're in the heat of the moment of whatever they're tackling, they know how to maneuver. They know who to use, who to step forward, who to step to the side, who steps back, and they're able to overcome. And the bottom line is this word synergy, right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Thank you, Aristotle, for that one.
My friend Ari.
Ari's a good buddy of mine, but a good Greek. I love the Greek. Ari is a great guy, Aristotle. And the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That to me is the summary of what we're trying to do here. And if you can get that whole working as one unit, then it goes way beyond anything we can do individually. Right. And that's the definition of synergy, is when that happens. And so, again, this all sounds easy, but here's number one. The leader needs to be able to communicate that this is a priority to the team, that we are going to take the time and invest. We are going to take the time and invest in building this ensemble and challenging it in ways that are going to allow us to succeed no matter what comes into our path.
That's such a good point that you bring up, because I do think that there is an kind of a bad assumption by a lot of leaders, but also a lot of team members that, oh, we all know how to do teamwork. We all know how to work as a team. Let's just get right to the work. Let's just get right to the work. And when I see groups skip that, that is to me when there is a big problem. And there is such a desire and a fear that we're going to, like, our brains are going to fail us, that we forget to kind of open up our hearts first, and that the rest will, and trust that the rest will follow. I think that's a really good tip, Greg, because a lot of times you'll see leaders, if we're brought in, you'll see the leaders either pull back or not be a part of it, right? They say, oh, I'll work on creating this deck, or I'll get back to my emails. And no. Like, this is the most important time, and so valuable for you to watch your team and watch all the dynamics as you have another facilitator in there doing that work, so that you can step back and be a part of the team, which is so critical. I love that idea. So yeah.
And it's so right on what you're saying. I
Okay,
have a
great.
specific example too, where I just worked with a bunch of bankers and their CEO, before the session began, got up. And the first thing he said to the whole team, again, I'm a guest that they brought in to do this workshop. And he gets up in front of everybody, goes, take out a piece of paper. Take out a piece of paper and a pen. I'm going to give you a quiz. So right away, everyone's like, oh, quiz, what? And like, but it's like this great energy, right? And he's like, all right, we started our learning journey together earlier this year. Who was our first facilitator? What was the workshop? Who was our second facilitator? What was the workshop? Who was our third facilitator? What was the workshop? And what is our facilitator's name today? And what workshop is he doing? So it was fantastic, right? Like, he got everybody basically in a fun way reflecting back on the learning journey. And he's also prioritizing how important this time is together. And also that, we're stepping out of the river of work to come and work on ourselves. And that is very important to him as a leader, to create that foundation. And today we're going to keep digging into that and uncovering as much as we can to continue building our strength as a team. So to me, that's a perfect example of a leader who isn't afraid to get up. And then he participated throughout the whole workshop.
That's great.
As one of the players, and he's taking notes, like you were saying about everybody.
So he can quiz them later.
Up. Yes, but it's that involvement, that engagement that then models to everybody, hey, this culture piece, this team dynamic piece is something we need to be working on all the time, because in the real world, we're going to be tested.
Yeah.
And, the data is going to tell us how we do.
And he knows his team, because they probably like that. There's a bit of a competition, right, in that, of testing yourself, of testing against each other as well. So cool. Great story. So let's talk about some tips today that people can do if you have a new team. And we're not talking about building a team today over years, which is what we're usually talking about. We're talking about if you've got a week, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month max, what do you have to do to pull a team together in the workplace to accomplish something? And these could be, maybe it's people that don't even know each other. Maybe it's people that maybe know each other, but, from afar, or haven't really worked together, or some have, some haven't. But what's one, I love the first tip, that if you're the leader, you are in there participating 100%. You are setting the tone. No phones, no laptops. We were recently working with a team, and they looked at us and they said, do we need our laptops for this workshop? And we said, absolutely not. They said, everybody shut your laptops. And sometimes it takes a strong leader voice to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that moment was so helpful, actually, when they all close their computers and then suddenly we're all there. So that first tip is the communication about the importance of this. The second tip is then, how do you create this psychologically safe environment for people to step out of their comfort zone? And that is something I want to communicate all the time right away. Okay, everybody, we're now going to be focusing on building this ensemble, building the connectivity between all these amazing players and all the skills you each bring into this space. And now we need to just commit and make it intentional about how we're going to step out of our comfort zone, because that's when we start to build, when we step out of that comfort zone. So we break that fear zone, we enter the learning and the growth zone together, and then it starts to grow. So that's the first thing.
And if you ever see, just because I want to dig in on how you do that, because I think that term sometimes throws people off, because so much of psychological safety is built over time with how you behave, right? However, there are ways that you can build this quickly. And if you've seen Greg in action, you've seen him do it. And when he talks about outside of their comfort zone, it means you immediately do something silly. Something that is when you mess up, because you will. If you play Shamie Says, which is, if it sounds like Simon Says, it is. Don't tell Greg though. But, Shamie Says, or you play some sort of game that we played as kids that everybody knows how to play. So quickly we go into our childlike state, and people are like, "Is this what we're doing at work?" But something about that brings us outside of our comfort zone, yet weirdly into our comfort zone, because it's who we really are as children in play. He gets them up there. They play something. Let's say it's Shamie Says, which is his version of Simon Says, right? So everybody's like a childlike state again. When someone gets out, like, remember Simon Says, touch your head, and you don't say Shamie Says before you touch your head, you're out, right? So there's a little bit of shame that comes over people when they're the first one out or the second one out. And what he does to create that psychological safety really quickly is he starts giving huge love and applause to that person. Like, great, he's showing us exactly how it's done. Awesome, everybody give him applause. And somehow it shifts that moment into going, okay, failure is safe here and fun, and doesn't have to be a big deal, and get out of your heads, people, because we're going to keep playing. And they don't make a big deal about it. We move on and we laugh, and everybody, then the next person that's out, not such a big deal. And you see them, when they get out, stand on the sidelines, start watching other people and smiling and being a part of it, not sitting there like we did sometimes as kids going, "I'm the worst ever," So I do think when he says that, that's one thing he does, is you have to do something silly, crazy, and go in with confidence. If you go in going, "Oh, guys, we're going to play, I know it's silly that we're going to play this game, but you got to go in, like, own it. You got to own it big."
Absolutely. And we make the actual challenge, the game, challenging, exciting, and we make it so that it's competitive, right? Because it's real and you're wanting to challenge them. So it's not just basic, but it builds. It builds. So, and I love that piece where, yes, we start to create an environment where people can feel okay to experiment, to drop the ball, to fail, and still feel part of it. And then their observations are just as important as their participation.
And you're watching. So what you're doing as a leader when you're watching this happen is you start to see parts of people's personalities, because I say this all the time. I believe the way people play is the way people work. And it's not how they talk, but it's how they behave in those moments when they don't think they're being watched, where you really see, "Oh, that's our team lead right there. Look how he handled when that person got out," or "Look how they chastised this person," or "Look how they pulled people in," or "Look how they laughed," or "Look how their brain works," or "Look how they're super analytical," or "They're super competitive." And you'll see parts of people to use in later teaming that you do that has to do with real, so-called, quote unquote, real work. So I think that it is not to be missed. A lot of times people will just get caught up in the game and not sit back and watch, how can I learn about my folks by watching them play? And you will learn more than you'll ever see watching them work on a spreadsheet or on their computers. You will see nothing, because it's all internal.
That's so good. And that's why we do challenges, and we start easy and we get harder and harder and harder and harder. The goal is to, like, if we were a basketball team, create an environment that is so difficult in practice that when you get into the game time, it's easy. So just like a baseball player puts a donut on a bat before they come into the box, right? They're swinging the heavy bat. They take the donut off, the heavy weight off the bat, and then suddenly they're up there and they can potentially hit a 98-mile-an-hour fastball now because the bat feels much lighter than it did when they were practicing. So in our practice sessions, we are slowly building in, through safe environments and scaffolding and building, we're building in challenges that are going to really make the team go through things that are going to show them a lot of different elements about how they respond or react to things in the moment. Even before that, though, getting participants, getting team members' voices in the space is a really important part of the safety piece and getting people involved. So even like, for back to my example with the CEO the other day when he was giving the quiz, he was still asking questions to them, and then he would get them to respond. Somebody answered the first question. Okay, great. Thank you, Michael. Right? Getting their voice in the space. So it's not just a talking head, right? We're not just a talking head up in the front. We're actually facilitating, making it easy for your team members to share their perspectives, their thoughts, again, because our thoughts as a whole are way stronger
Yeah.
than my thoughts alone.
In that, getting voices in the room, I think it is important first day for the leader to give a few minutes in the beginning to set people's mind at ease as why we're here, what are the norms, what are we doing, why is this important? So setting purpose, expectations first, and then right away, as Greg said, getting their voices in the room. So that could be going around, you know, asking them their name, their role, because they're going to be looking around going, what is my role? Where do I fit in? So if they can easily, quickly, clearly define their roles, that helps their brains relax and go, okay, now I know where I fit in. Then you ask a question, and I love this question when we see it start to really transform folks, is you ask a question like, what's the best team you've ever been a part of? And what made that team so great? And then you give them examples because they're going to be worried. Like, oh, what if I don't say it's my boss now? Or what if it's not the person that's in this room? You say, I'm talking back to a little league team you were on, some team you coached, a choir that you were a part of, a church group that went on a mission, whatever team means to you, what's the best team you've ever been a part of? And if you cannot think of one, because sometimes I've had people have a really visceral reaction because they've had such a bad team experience, that you then say, or what's the absolute worst team you've been a part of and why? Because the importance is not the team, although you'll see people get emotional a little bit, right? When they talk about how excited they were on a team. But really what's important is the words you're writing down as they're talking are the things that describe the qualities of that team, because that's what you're going for with your team. And you start to see that people have the same qualities, regardless of the team. It's qualities around, we trusted each other, we listened to each other, we believed in each other, we amped each other up, we communicated well. We had fun together. Whatever those conversations are, those are the qualities that you're now putting up, basically a list of values that everybody kind of agrees with, right? And so that can be a really powerful start, and also helps you when you start to have trouble with your team later, key into what is important to them and how can I get them back in place of this, right? So that's my next tip.
Yeah, really good. And then building on that, I think, is just getting to know people's strengths and areas for growth. And that's another great question that we like to unpack in different ways. Really around, again, when I think about it, when I think of being on amazing teams, I think about all the different skill sets that have come together. And, oh, I can rely on Christine because I know she's going to deliver on X, Y, and Z. And I bring this, and I feel confidence bringing this to the team, right? And if we all feel that we're each bringing something special, a superpower to this team, then suddenly we feel valued. If we feel valued, we start to engage. If we're engaged, we're going to perform
We
well.
do an exercise called Ways We Work Best, and we'll put up around the room big posters, right, of different prompts, and we'll put on some music and people will move around from poster to poster. And one of those is like, ways we work best, and then things we hate, pet peeves, things that drive us crazy, that could be on different posters. And you start to see people just write down things, no names attached or whatever, but then they start to talk about it afterwards. And in the facilitation, you get a supercharged, fast way to learn what does and does not work for people so that we can avoid the pitfalls, because all of us don't want to piss off our team members, right? So if we can see like, oh, this is a pet peeve of Greg's maybe to get things last minute, then I can know like, oh, I got to keep that in mind. The other thing you can do on those activities is you start to see communication styles. And so we'll most of the time, if we can, have them do a pre-assessment before they get together, like the 6 types of working genius or DISC or social styles or something, so that we can give the analytical minds in the room, the discerning minds in the room, a moment to like tag into like, this is how I can understand this person a little better. This is a way in. And so it gives a fast way to know each other quickly, because you only have a week or two. You don't have the years that a lot of teams have to know each other.
Yeah, it's really Interesting. And I guess the bottom line here, as we're bringing this to toward a close, the bottom line here is, again, prioritizing the importance of this culture building, this team building, of this ensemble building, because giving them an opportunity to actually do all the things we're talking about, so that when they do get back into the river, that they're ready to attack it differently as this whole versus these individual parts. And when you do that, it's fascinating because we've seen it with clients where we've trained them and we've worked them and their presentations and so on, and they go in there and they pitch for the job, and then suddenly, bam, they get the job. And we're like, yes, you guys really worked on it so hard and shared so much of yourselves and sweat, blood, and tears in the trainings we did, and then you went in there and delivered, and you ended up booking it, which is fantastic. So that's such a highlight for us as we do our work to support building these ensembles, building the trust, helping to build the trust, and then seeing the outcomes that can
it's
come.
great. And if you do get a chance, last tip of the day, and we'll close out because it's so great to have you, Greg. And we'll do this topic, I think, again, because we're just scratching the surface. But I do think if you could create a quick, fun, multiple activities, hopefully, that put them into a kind of work situation where they have to do something together, build something together, figure out something together, then they get a template for how they're going to work together on projects that are more complex and more difficult that they can draw from. And so I think creating those activities, or having facilitators like Greg come in and create those activities so that people will have an experience working together where it's fun, where it's safe, where it's not terrible if you fail, like you can learn from it in a safe way, so that when you go into the workplace, you can draw on those as experiences and common vocabulary and experiences to enjoy together. So anyway.
I just want to add two things to that. One is what happens in those groups, which is the strategizing together. When they strategize together, that's very much replicates what happens in the workplace. And then the debrief, or the processing of what happened, why didn't that work, what could we have done differently. Again, the key to continual improvement is this debriefing and this breaking down or deconstructing what happened so that we can construct better the next time.
All right, guys, go out there, take some time to put into building, and the teamwork will pay off in multiple ways, and it'll be fun. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks so much, Christine. What a pleasure. Talk to you all
Okay,
hopefully again soon.